Welcome to the All About GTM podcast, where I invite thought leaders in my network to spill the tea on everything go-to-market. I'm your host, Jade Maravillas. The last 2 decades have seen unparalleled shifts in technology, which has directly affected how we do business and speak to our customers. From the earliest days of digital and search marketing to our AI-driven realities of today, Nikki Sue Low Chee has had a front row seat to these changes. From her time as a MarTech and AdTech specialist working in big brands such as IBM, SAP, JP Morgan, and PhD, to her last role as a CMO for an insurtech company. In this episode, we talk about the blessing and the curse of AI as a marketer, how conversations change when you're in the C-suite, and the rise of fractional marketing leadership in a downturn. We also talk about the challenges of transforming conservative industries into the modern digital age, which she's done many times over. Hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I did recording it. But for now, here's Nikki Sue Low Chee. Hi, Nikki.
Hello. Hi, Jade. How are you?
Good. How's life in New York?
I'm good. It's a little bit cold here, but it's New York, so all good.
I feel like we're still in the same city because London is not very warm at the moment. In fact, it's just going to be raining the whole week. So welcome to London. I don't know if you listen.
Yes, I did hear something in the forecast about snow, so we'll see. I don't mind it though. I kind of love the snow.
Yeah, well, better snow than rain, I say. But hey-ho, I picked the wrong country. So just to give everyone a flavor, Nikki and I have known each other for a few years. In fact, I not only hired her to join my team, I stalked her on LinkedIn to convince her to join my team. And I'm absolutely glad that she did, because not only has she done an amazing job in helping us grow our digital marketing footprint at a previous e-commerce company that I worked for, it also made us friends. I thought I'd invite you to this podcast anyway, because I think you have a fascinating story and a background. But before we go into that, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into your family history, because not a lot of people know, but there's quite a big community of Chinese people in the Caribbean, and that is your background. So tell me, how does Trinidadian Chinese people end up in New York?
That's a good question. I'm still not 100% sure because they don't talk about it a whole lot. But yeah, so basically, I'm American. We're of Chinese heritage, and both my parents actually grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. Culturally, we are, I suppose what you can say, westernized. Because Trinidad and Tobago, it was a British colony many years ago. And so unfortunately, none of us speak or understand Chinese. But there's definitely still quite a bit of the Chinese heritage that lingers around culturally. And then for food, it's great. We just eat food from every culture. So our family is just kind of a big melting pot, and it's definitely interesting culturally, right? Because on one hand, I think Chinese people culturally tend to be more modest. On the other hand, the Caribbean culture definitely not. They're very outspoken, and so it's odd because I've inherited a little bit of all of that, and it just comes out at different times.
So you grew up in New York. I guess you've come full circle. You're back there again, and
Yes.
then you've had a few international stints in between. How did you find yourself in digital marketing, specifically in search marketing? I think that's one of the first things you've done, which was back then quite it wasn't as common as it is nowadays.
Yes. I think my career it's been kind of trendy in the sense that the opportunities have come up as things grow. And I just kind of fell into things. I have a double major, and the double major was in communication and English literature. And I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with English literature. The truth is, I wanted to write. I didn't know what I wanted to write. I just wanted to write. And what happened was when I graduated college or uni, I started working. My very first job was working for a publication. And I thought that would somehow help me get to a career in writing. But this is all like pre-digital era, or when the digital era was just coming about in publications. And actually even now still with ad tech, the money is in the advertising. So what I was hired for, I was able to write, but I was basically writing advertorials. Um, that is what got me into advertising, and it just kind of stemmed from there. I was at this publishing company, basically working on market research, writing advertorials, and you're supporting the revenue function, which basically that's what kind of got me started in marketing. And at some point, one of the graphic designers that I worked with, her boyfriend, who was an engineer, was working for a technology company, and she's like, "Oh, come over to I won't say the name of the company, but she's like, "Oh, come over to this tech company. We really need a writer." And it was a startup, so I was writing, but I kind of did everything for marketing for this startup company. It was a real estate appraisal software company, and yeah, and that's it. And then one of the things that we did, it started off with email. So my first foray into digital was really like email and spamming people to death. Um,
Back when we thought that that was like the coolest thing on ice.
yes. Back when you would use like mail merge, Microsoft mail merge to do personalized emails. Yeah.
For the young kids in the room, what year was that?
Oh gosh. It would have been early 2000s, like 2002, 2003, something like that. Oh my, how times have changed.
Yeah, I let's just say that I started out my career in music around that time as well, and we still had cassettes.
Yep.
Well, I mean, majority of it was in CDs, but we still sold cassettes. So yes, for some of the young people listening to this, that was a completely different technology before your day. So let's talk about
Yep.
that in a different episode. But yeah, so email marketing, and then how did you get into search then?
Yeah, like I said, I think things had just evolved. My role at the real estate software company, it was like all marketing, but because it's a technology company, they were digital first. So it was a lot of like email marketing, website, that sort of thing. And then when I went over to SAP, it started off the same way, and my careers kind of moved along with the trends. So it started off with email, then website, which became search, and then paid search, which became advertising again. And then that, forayed into social and product ownership, because I had ownership of some websites, but I had to work very closely with the developers on, hey, here's what I want for the website, that sort of thing. So that forayed into product ownership, and all of that then eventually became digital and growth marketing and strategy. And, at that point in time, you've got, nearly 20 years under your belt, and it all kind of blends together.
As a hands-on practitioner, all the way to 20 years after, overseeing marketing for different types of technology companies, how has ad tech and martech changed in those 20 years?
I can't even keep up with it anymore, honestly. I initially joined an organization called Pavilion, and that was really to help me keep up with the technologies and how quickly they were changing. It was an education thing for me. I was listening to podcasts and doing all sorts of searches, but I really needed like just some good, solid information from people who had done the work, and this is what worked for me, sort of thing. So that's why I initially joined Pavilion, but even so, I still can't keep up with it. And I think it's really fascinating, because I think about, I don't know how old Facebook now is, let's say like 15 years ago, when you think about a technology like Facebook, we thought it was such a game changer, right? It's like, in advertising and marketing, traditionally, you target your audience based on demographic, like age, whatever. Well, that was really the only option that you had. And then Facebook came along, and it's like, okay, for once you have real data that you can target against expressed interests. People like will actually say, I'm interested in sneakers, or I'm interested in lifestyle brands and that sort of thing. And it was amazing. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is such a game changer. But then privacy laws came into place, and everything had gone full circle. And a lot of MarTech and ad tech had evolved even more so to help you uncover the information that was being masked by privacy policy. And it just keeps changing and evolving to the point where I don't even feel like I can keep up with it anymore. And now, of course, there's AI, and all of these companies and tools, they've added an AI layer to the technology that already exists. And I think what's most fascinating and interesting is in terms of the change is that we know more now, right? So I think early on when I took an interest in digital, a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was data. We can see, exactly what people's response is. There's a short period of time where we can see what's working and what's not. And now it's just like we're inundated with information from multiple different angles. And then you still need someone to put it together or whatever. You feed it to an AI tool and have them do an analysis, have it do an analysis. But it's like, I would say the biggest difference is that we know more. The information is coming at us faster than ever before, and you have to make quicker decisions. At the same rate, I do feel like what's missing for me is there's less thought put into how we go to market, for example. So an example
It's
that I
more
will
like
use.
a copy paste, other
Yes,
people have done it, so this is what we should be doing.
exactly. And so, as an example, we were talking about search early on in search when we didn't really understand what the Google algorithm was. We all made some guesses and we thought, okay, we just have to pick a couple of keywords and insert the keyword as many times as possible. And over the years, people have uncovered more and more about the Google algorithm, which is great. So it's the visibility that helps us. And then there are tools, right? So now it's like, I feel like, with tools like SEMrush, nobody gives thought into, okay, like if I just close my eyes and think about if I were the person with this business pain point, what would I type into the search toolbar rather than, all right, I'm just going to find the closest competitors to me, see what they're bidding on and what they're optimizing on and just use that. And I'm sure that's fine. It probably works 95% of the time, but there could be a huge opportunity that you're missing out on.
Yeah, I was talking to someone else on another podcast a few days ago, and one of the things that she said, and she's an AI expert, one of the things that she said was that we are starting to lose our ability to not just distill information, but to really take a step back and use our brains. So it's just so easy nowadays to not only copy what other people are doing, but then just ask AI to do it for us.
Yeah.
And then it becomes quite vanilla after that.
Correct. I agree. At the same rate, it's like we don't have a choice because it's like, again, the rate of things is just accelerated such that if you don't do it, then you're left behind, right?
I'm reminded by a day in the summer where I get a text from Nikki saying, please call me up. I just found myself talking to ChatGPT for the last 10 minutes. So I did call her up and I was like, do you need a friend? Do you need a human voice to talk to?
Yes. It was ChatGPT. It just made it too easy. Like, yes, I don't know. It's changed the way that I work. We are fortunate that in marketing, something like ChatGPT and these chatbots, they're perfect for the sort of things that we do in marketing. So it's changed the way that I work and that things can go out like a lot sooner. And then, to be honest, I think even for creative things like writing, I get really. There was a point in time in my life where I was reading a lot so I could write really well. But these days, everything is just like little bits, short format. And so I'm not as strong of a writer as I used to be. And so for someone like me, ChatGPT and Claude, it's great because I can basically write, here's what I generally want to say, please clean this up for me. And it does a better job, in my opinion, of articulating it. But people who are real writers, they of course hate it, right? They feel like the AI, it doesn't retain their voice as well, and it doesn't come across as authentically.
Yeah, that said, I was listening to a podcast with Seth Godin, who is one of my absolute heroes, and he actually used Claude to write his latest book. And
Wow.
the thing is, it's always about a combination of that human oversight. There has to be an element of that.
Yeah.
But also using tools that exist nowadays at our disposal to make us a little bit more efficient, but also have that, I guess, proverbial person on the other side of the line if you didn't have a friend that you can call to bounce ideas off each other.
Yes. Yeah. And look, I mean, it's helped me a ton in my real life as well. So as you know, I've also gone down the path of self-employment very recently, started my LLC, and
Congrats.
it's tax. Yeah, thank you. It is tax season here in the US, and so I've decided to start, doing my taxes. And actually, after talking to our mutual friend Jared, He was like, "Oh, you should just do it yourself. It's pretty easy." So I did start, but it was just like I had so many questions, and like had it not been for ChatGPT to answer these questions and help me understand like what I can write off and which categories, I don't know what I would have done. I definitely would have paid some bozo $2,000 to do it for me instead.
Well, okay, let's talk a little bit about the dark side of this new technology. So, just
Sure.
like what you mentioned, you could have easily paid a couple of $1,000 outsourcing this to a professional, which in some cases you should be doing anyway. But then it's also made things like this self-serve, in this case, taxes, right? But let's just talk about marketing in a marketing context, creating social media posts or being able to write certain copy. It's both been an augmentation, but also a replacement, right? In a lot of marketing roles. And I mean, not to hold back information, you and I were both in a similar position last year where we were both in marketing leadership roles, and maybe because of it, but maybe not as well. There's a lot of different reasons with the economy nowadays and overcorrection in hiring. We were affected by redundancies, right?
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on you know, this new technology being a blessing and or a curse?
It is both. As you mentioned, it's definitely a double-edged sword. Full transparency, I spent about 5 years in London, recently moved back over the summer. And as I was moving back, a friend had reached out and she said, "Hey, I'm at a startup. I'm the only marketing person and I could really use some help. And I could really use your experience. Would you mind, coming to help me out on a fractional basis while you look for something full time?" And I said, "Sure." So I started doing it and I loved it so much that, to be honest, I never really started looking for that full-time role because I loved the autonomy of being on my own, having my own business and that sort of thing. Uh, as I'm sure you see, it also allows you to step back from the politics, which is kind of nice. But towards the end, um, certainly I think that, sorry, let me take a step back. So I find that the last three companies that I have either supported or worked for, what happens is the company says like, okay, we're ready for growth. We're going to invest in marketing, setting up our marketing infrastructure, et cetera. And then they do that for a year or two. And then they decide that marketing is really high cost and they're going to make major cuts to marketing. So long story short, that is what has happened to me consecutively 3 times in these are three fingers, not this, three times in a row. Again, unfortunately, it's a blessing and a curse. Like I very recently heard, well, full disclosure, it was about renewing a contract. Like why would we hire Nikki when there's AI, that AI can do a lot of this work? And like the truth is, look, I was using AI, but the benefit that you get from someone like us with the experience is that we know what we're looking for. So you need the right inputs to create the right prompts for the AI to give you a quality response. And then even from there, then it does take someone with our experience to kind of filter through, to your point, like no, I don't want to call it hallucination. It's AI has, because what AI does is recognize patterns. Sometimes you read something and it sounds good, but the words don't actually make sense holistically. So as an example, I was working on some messaging for a new product that was designed to make proactive recommendations to your sustainability programs in a manufacturing setting based on ROI, what will give you the highest return on investment. And with that, I usually put a brief together, upload it to an AI, and then say, this is the output that I'm looking for. And the AI had interpreted it as sustainable ROI. But I'm like, no, it's actually not the same. We're not talking about sustainable ROI. We're talking about an ROI based on sustainability outcomes, which is two totally different things. And so if you just left it up to the AI, there would be a major flaw in this product positioning.
Yeah, it's amateur thinking
Yes,
to
yes,
think that you can completely replace people with AI,
of course.
even if it becomes the best it can be. The challenge is that you can't really know what is the data behind what it's learning from. you can start off with the same data, but the learning of that machine could be different in one program or another.
Yeah.
And it can come out with different results, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think with all technology, at the end of the day, it's what we make of it, how do we use it? And so, of course, the benefit, obviously, for people like us is that it saves time. And using my last example, if I tried to come up with a product brochure and product positioning on my own, I would say that it probably would have taken me a week by myself to do the interviews, think about what are the different options, what sounds best, and, soundboard it off of different people. With an AI tool, I can basically do it in a day instead of a week. So, those are the benefits. Downfalls, of course, are I guess it's an education thing. It would be sad to think that it's not that complete jobs are eliminated, but like any other technology, it does change the way we work. So we just have to figure out how to work with AI tools differently.
Cool. Let's shift the topic a little bit because I wanted to learn a little bit from your work history. You've
Sure.
done a lot of different things for some of the world's largest organizations. So
Yeah.
you started out your career in something else and then you moved into SAP, and a lot of that was in terms of demand gen and digital marketing. And then you transitioned into a huge bank, JP Morgan,
Yeah.
looking at the digital strategy for mutual funds in the US. So
Yes.
first of all, what gets you from SAP to JP Morgan, and did you learn anything from that transition?
It was just network. It was a network connection. It was actually someone that I was working with at the time at SAP. He saw a role come up, and to be fair, like I loved working at SAP. I had a great run there, but I was also very young, and when you're in your 20s, it's like I couldn't get promoted and get big enough raises fast enough. So that's the only reason why I left. But, this person that I was working with at SAP, he saw someone in his network post something about a role at JP Morgan. This is a great opportunity. And it was. So yeah, that's how I found the role. At the same rate, I had been so spoiled by working in technology. It definitely presented quite a bit of culture shock to me because, technology culturally, they want forward thinking individuals. They want everyone to make some sort of like groundbreaking decision. Whereas in things like financial institutions, or even more recently, I was working for an insurance technology company. These guys are rooted in heritage and tradition, and they're very proud of that because it's a business that has been around literally for like hundreds of years, right? And it was definitely more culture shock than anything else because additionally, with a company, any financial services institution, the technical environment is very restrictive. Everything needs to be, pre-approved, for example, if you're working on social media. So I honestly feel like you spend more of your time, working through all of the red tape than the outputs, so to speak. So yeah, it was definitely a transition, but it was interesting for me because I grew up in New York. I'm from New York. The finance industry is huge here, as it is in London. And so it's something that I wanted to learn about, which I did, and that's it, task done.
You've touched a little bit about it there, but one of the things I wanted to find out from you is you've had a few experiences now within these conservative industries, finance, insurance, right? How do you bring these companies that are rooted in legacy, but also rooted in conservatism into the 21st century, into 2025?
Carefully. There, I think that one thing that I've learned the hard way over the years is like, again, and just for context, I'll share this quickly. So the insurance technology company that I was working for, and I didn't know, first of all, it's specialty insurance. So specialty insurance it's a very weird niche. They focus on very specific things like insuring for cargo shipping. I don't know, it's buildings. It's very niche. And I didn't realize how old this industry is. And as an example, I was putting together an event and I looked up the organization and it said blah, blah, blah since like 1680 something. And it was just like, oh my God, like, So we're literally talking about organizations that have been around for hundreds of years, and they've got a ton of pride in that longevity and again in their heritage. And so you really have to be very respectful of that, number one. But number two, at the end of the day, any marketing, you have to show that you understand your customer, your client. You have to understand who you're talking to. So it's not okay to just come in and say like, hey, you guys are doing it wrong and there's a better way to do this. It really has to be balanced with respect. So you kind of have to figure out a way to speak to them that says like, I know you've been doing it this way for 100 years, but hey, did you know that things could be easier? There's a better way, for example, to process like hundreds and thousands of lines of data, than a spreadsheet. So it's honestly, it is careful. One thing that I do find again with these very traditional industries is it's not just the sensitivity and the pride of what they have been able to accomplish. You have to give them the respect to show like, okay, like I'm interested. I get why the industry is the way that it is. I understand your day to day and the sensitivity and all that, the sensitivity around the data and why you want to process it on your own and that sort of thing. So you have to kind of like balance that with education is really it at the end of the day. You just have to find like the one or two people and or organizations where, for example, there is someone who's younger and open to trying new things. Because another thing that it doesn't change across industries, even within these traditional industries, is that like competition. They're very much keeping an eye out on their own competition. And if they do see that a competitor is doing something new, then they will, that will definitely trigger a reaction. So I would say that those are the two things. It's a balance. You definitely have to show respect, so to speak.
Tread carefully.
Yes, and understanding. It's just like really about like with any other good quality marketing, you've got to show understanding.
One of the other things that you guys did when you were at that company was a rebrand.
Yes.
I absolutely loved it. It really
Thank
brings
you.
that visual representation of bringing a potentially old-fashioned industry or old-fashioned brand into today. Tell me how that process went and what the reception was, considering it was so different from what else is in the market.
And I have to give credit, of course, to our friend and colleague Bernardo Lemgruber.
Woohoo!
He was our brand director. He also found a great agency. When the agency originally came back to us, they came back to us with what you would typically expect for technology brands, and then they came back to us with the brand that you recognize. I have been on a couple of, for some reason, I don't know what I signed up for, but I signed up for something design related, and I kept getting like a bunch of like, it just so happens that at that point in time, simultaneously with this brand redesign, I'd been getting a bunch of brand like email updates or design template email updates. And so I was seeing a lot of, the new designs that were coming about. But what was most important to me is that even though we were working in a very traditional industry, what I wanted to illustrate is that we are a technology company, and therefore the brand needs to reflect something that is new and groundbreaking, right? We are working with insurance companies that are traditional, but we don't want our brand to reflect the tradition per se. It's more that we are bringing something new to the table. So that was really important to me. And truthfully, initially, when the agency came back to us, there were a couple of options, but namely, the first option was what you would very much expect from a typical technology brand, and the other is what you would see today. It's just more contemporary, very very forward thinking. And again, I have to give Bernardo some credit for pushing me that way, because my first inclination is exactly what you said. It's like, okay, this is a very traditional industry. I don't think they'll understand. Let's go the safe route. But the more and more that I thought about it, it's like, all right, well, design is definitely going in this other direction. So let's just stay ahead of the curve, very, very simply. And I think it worked out lovely. Like I'm so proud of the brand. From a marketing perspective, when I do think about brands that are, for example, like easy to work with, it's like, okay, here's the one brand color, the one brand font, and here's the splash color. There's not a lot to work with, so it can get a little bit frustrating. But the power of, the brands that we developed, it's like there are multiple fonts, there are multiple colors, there's a broad color palette to work with. And I was a little bit worried about that, because I'm like, oh man, the sales team is going to have a heyday with this. But it's like it's not that bad, and it's totally fine because it allows the people at the company to be more creative with the brand. And most importantly, look, it stands out, right? Because when I look at the other insurtech companies who were competitors to our brand, they all have a similar look and feel. And so this really enabled us to stand out, and I couldn't be happier with it.
What was the reception across the organization, the industry, but also were you able to tie in that rebrand to any tangible business results?
So as CMO, I'd always had a dashboard set up of all of our marketing metrics for each part of the marketing funnel. So for brand, we had several metrics that we are looking at as a team, and then the roll-up metrics that I would report to the rest of the leadership team.
What would those metrics be? So if you kind of go through the different stages of the funnel, as a CMO, what are the most important metrics for you to be able to translate that into the rest of the board, the rest of the senior
Mhm.
leadership and say, this
Yeah,
is what we're doing and this is how we tie
yeah,
it back to the business?
yeah. So I would say, I will start by saying that unfortunately, my experience is that the last three companies that I've worked for and or supported first heavily invested in marketing, and then they kind of like say, "Oh wait, actually, marketing is really expensive. We're gonna cut the amount that we're spending on marketing." So I don't know that there's a magic answer. I think that it's important to acknowledge that there's definitely a gap, right? Like, and boards at the end of the day, what are they looking at? They're looking at financials. And so one thing that was really important to me, I think that my leadership team was a little bit frustrated with me, but one thing that was really important to me was getting our HubSpot set up correctly and getting our sales and marketing alignment structured from a process perspective, definition perspective, and then lined up to what is reflected in HubSpot. And that's because at the end of the day, the most important metric to me that I thought the board would understand is pipeline contribution, marketing pipeline contribution. And so that was really important to me. But you need a lot of stuff set up front in order to be able to track that with any accuracy, any level of accuracy whatsoever.
And that
So, I
takes a
would
lot
say
of
like,
investment.
yeah, because I mean, look, you can initially in the early days when you're first getting started, like what were we focused on in the very early days? It was just your basic things, of course, right? Such as website, product positioning, brand positioning, getting the content program started and having a blog and building our subscriber base and all that sort of thing, building a follower base. But like the board doesn't care about stuff like impressions and website views and all that sort of thing. But in my opinion, at least, what they're looking at is revenue at the end of the day. Whenever you're talking about like SaaS enterprise sales, well, I will never have a direct line into revenue, but I can show the marketing influence in revenue. I think that's changing a little bit with like a lot of this product led growth stuff. But for now, it's the most important number for me was being able to show marketing pipeline contribution and saying, this is what we're contributing to pipeline.
There's a million things in my head that I wanted to ask you just based off the last couple of minutes. The first thing is we haven't touched on it, but you actually transitioned. So from JP Morgan, you went into
Mhm.
IBM, which was quite a big part of your career. And a lot of your career has been in marketing, but
Yes,
you also moved into product, right?
yes.
Uh, how has your marketing background play a role in that transition into product and vice versa, especially working in technology marketing? A lot of it's very closely intertwined.
Yeah, I think it just introduces flexibility. I like the holistic thinking and being able to see big picture strategy. And to me, at the end of the day, all of this stuff is intertwined. It all works together, right? At the end of the day, from the customer perspective, it all works into the customer experience. And so what happened at JP Morgan is basically since my role was focused on digital strategy, I became the product owner for the mutual fund's website, as well as there are two apps that I had under my belt. And because at a financial institution, the technology environment is quite restrictive, I ended up spending a lot of my time working with the engineering team on these three digital products. So product owner it was supposed to be like a small piece of my job, but it ended up becoming a large part of my job because, I was very dependent on these three products to do my job. And then at IBM, it was a natural transition for me to become a full-on product owner. And now, again, with the way that the industry is going away from hiding everything in like a try-buy environment to a product-led growth environment where it's like you give everyone the basic product for free, it changes marketing's job, right? Marketing's job then becomes more along the lines of, okay, well, once you have people in the product, how do you keep them engaged and get them to the point where they are purchasing, spending money on either to upgrade or on different pieces of the product. So I feel like it's just all kind of come full circle, right? Because if you think about it, right, like the product marketing or customer marketing, it's still marketing, right? So it's like, okay, well, what am I doing to influence client behavior or customer behavior? What am I doing to turn this person into a fan of this product? That sort of thinking. So it's all just come full circle. And it's almost like conflated. But we were talking about how the digital ad tech and all that sort of thing has changed. It's changed to the point where it's like, I find it overwhelming. But stuff like this, I'm kind of glad that it's all coming together full circle. So even in my last role with the insurtech company, I was working a lot with the client success team because to me, there's so many marketing principles that can be applied to that discipline, from the way that they write emails to how frequently the emails are sent to even like the videos. So we were doing demo videos and our team was helping the CS team quite a lot with those demo videos. And again, it's just because it's like there's so many marketing principles that can be applied to these different disciplines.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen, especially within marketing for B2B technology companies, is that there's a lot of focus on top of the funnel customer acquisition. So you put a lot of your investment in there. Then after a while, people kind of just start forgetting that you actually have to market to existing customers as well, because churn is definitely a metric that people need to be more aware of. But it feels like it's a very top heavy and you kind of just forget how do you actually drive that customer love and engagement and your affiliation with the brand.
Yeah. I think people take it for granted. And look, at the end of the day, we're talking about like how all of this ladders up to boards and investors and that sort of thing. I think that almost always there's this focus on growth. And when they talk about growth, then inherently the focus ends up being on new brands and new labels, new logos, rather than the existing logos, unfortunately, because it's like, I think especially for the startup, that is how their success is measured, is how much can we grow in terms of revenue, in terms of new clients, rather than thinking about, the existing clients. Like I'm still shocked by, a lot of these technology companies, especially when you're in like the lower tier subscriptions, lacking the client services or the customer services, because they expect it to be like fully self-serve. And it's like, guys, you're already taking our money. Like if you could just keep us happy, and offer like a full service offering, that would be awesome.
It all goes again full circle to what we were discussing earlier, which was the AI with chatbots nowadays. Sometimes you're just like, damn it, I just want to talk to a human.
Exactly. Like I seriously can't believe how many of these products that have hundreds of thousands of users and still the default when you need help is, okay, please insert something into this chatbot that doesn't understand what you're asking, but
at least they have a chatbot. Sometimes it's just, well, you go to the FAQs or you just kind of have to figure it out yourself. So it's not really great customer experience. So you touched on the senior leadership side of things again. I'm really curious to find out, how can marketing have that seat at the table? A lot of boards have very little representation in that sense. You obviously have the commercial teams, finance, some operations, the people within that, risk, regulatory, especially if you're in financial services. But I don't see a lot of marketers being in that group, right? What do you think is lacking, and how can us as marketers change that?
Yeah, I think that marketers are it's generally seen again as a nice to have. very frankly, in terms of business strategy rather than a must-have. And when you think about the way that companies are evaluated and they're looking at the financials, like again, brass tacks, it's like marketing is seen as an expense rather than direct tie into revenue. And so there's a bit of an education thing. It's just about trust and building relationships. So I can't claim to have like had a seat at the board table.
It's very rare.
Yeah. It's really, at my last organization, it was just the two founders really who had any interaction whatsoever with the board. But, I was fortunate to have a very good relationship with our CEO, and because they made this decision of like, okay, we are investing in marketing. He was also fortunately very open to, I would sit with him and like educate him on, okay, some basic marketing principles. Like, okay, we need to spend money on brand and awareness before we can do any demand gen and lead gen. And with that, honestly, there's a little bit of like trial and error, because I could see there were times when his eyes were glazing over, and it's just like, all right, well, if he's not interested in it and he can't explain it, he's never going to take that to the board, which is, why, even though in the early days I was explaining to him how important the brand stuff was, he was like, yeah, I kind of get it. But like, I could also see that it wasn't so important to him that it was something that he would really bring up with the board, which is why I then started to focus more and more on the pipeline generation stuff. So here's the key marketing number. And then similarly with the sales team, I definitely made an effort to be very close with our head of sales, knowing his influence and just making sure that we were on the same page. So I think, for individuals, it really is a matter of like the relationship building. The example with the salesperson, the reason why I need to make sure that we're in lockstep is because I need him to think of it as sales and marketing is one program, rather than sales has a program and marketing has a program. And that's the only way that messaging gets back to the board, and that one thing can't happen without the other. So yeah, it's a combination of the relationship as well as education.
I wanted to close on this question. So you and I, most of our career has been in full-time roles within companies. And it's not just us, but there's a lot of different professionals in different industries that are going into fractional roles. But I feel like there's a lot of us looking into this, primarily because there's a lot of us in the market, either because of our own volition, or it was forced upon us, or it's also because we're going into a downturn, right?
Yes.
So what are the benefits of employing someone like you, Nikki, as a fractional marketing leader versus, say, trying to save on costs and getting a couple of junior people to do marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the experience of course, right? I think for me in particular, I work mostly in, as you mentioned, some of these traditional industries. And again, even for companies like IBM and SAP, they're technology, but it's technology for traditional industries such as manufacturing. And in cases like that, the benefit is you're getting the experience. And so basically you save time. It's really a time saving measure, and therefore also a cost saving measure, right? Because you're working with someone who has the experience, and they're going to get it right the first time, because you do need to work with someone who gets it. Some of the things that we talked about in terms of really understanding the customer, that really only comes from a combination of research and experience. And even again, in terms of thinking about things like working with an AI, fine, I'll still work with an AI, but like I know the right prompts to leverage, because I know exactly what I'm looking for in the output, what the right target market is, what the right sentiments are, how they want to be spoken to, that sort of thing. I think that really only comes from someone with experience. So I think the benefit of working with a fractional leader is that you are getting a ton of experience without having to pay, of course, for a full-time role. And ultimately that will save time. It also means that the work that you're getting is just better quality, quite simply. It's high quality output versus hiring someone who is junior, or even on one of the fractional communities that I'm on, there's a lot of discussion about the difference between freelance versus fractional. I think that when you are using, for example, just a freelancer, they become very much like an AI, where it's like, okay, they have this template and this is the template I'm going to use over and over again. Whereas working with a fractional leader, you're getting someone who is embedded in the company, a vested interest, and so they're taking the time to learn your brand, learn what you're about, and vice versa, as well as on the customer side. You're saving the time and energy where it counts. So whether it's a startup company or it's a company, working on a product launch, you don't really want to waste time with resources that might not have the experience to see how these things, perform and do in the marketplace. So for me, it's about, yes, saving time and just getting the best quality. One thing that I will say, after many years in marketing, the one thing that I do know is that in marketing and also in sales, what wins over and over, after having done years of testing, what wins over and over again is always quality. It comes down to quality, So having something generic, it's never going to excel,
Yeah. You need that differentiation, especially in
Yes,
such a crowded market where
yes,
everything is vanilla, especially now
yes,
with AI as well. So
yeah.
that's a good segue to where can people find you if they want to avail of your fractional marketing services?
On LinkedIn,
As
keeping
it
it
is,
simple. Yep, I'm focused really just on LinkedIn. So I don't know, Jade, I guess you'll put a link
I
to
will.
our LinkedIn. Yep, perfect. Yep,
Great. All right. So
awesome.
thank you so much, Nikki. It was so lovely catching up. I miss you.
Same here, dude. Seriously, I miss
Uh,
working with you. I miss, doing stuff like this. This is fantastic. So thanks so much for having me on.
Who knows? I mean, the world works in mysterious ways, and I'm sure maybe at some point we can find ourselves working together again. But I do miss you in the sense that I don't have someone to have my Asian food on a random Tuesday. Bearing in mind that now I live so close to where you used to live, I could actually walk it, and now you're in New York. So, well, I have an
Aw.
excuse to go to New York then.
Yes, please come visit anytime. Open invitation.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jade.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you like that episode, please consider subscribing, read my blog at www.newmarketgtm.com, and follow me on LinkedIn under New Market GTM. Our next episodes go beyond channels and talk about organizational change and diversity, equity, inclusion in GTM. So please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. See you for the next one.